Hello, fictional. Welcome to the fiction series X. Today we are gonna see, what if Issei fall in love with Serafall Leviathan? Part 1. If you end up liking this video, please consider subscribe, so without further ado, let's get into the video. A day has passed over Kuo Academy, the grounds being swept with an unnatural calm. But as a certain group of people step inside the new household of the Hyoudou family, the Occult Research Club begins their after-school meeting. An annual event for the devils that made up the club. Issei calmly sat down on the couch in the large along with Kiba, who was calmly eating a bowl of strawberries and even more casually tossing the stems into a small trash can near the two. The girls. Riaz, Akeno, Asia, Kaneko, and Zenobia were all in the sauna part of the large building. The office and arena were playing cards while watching Issei's very own show, which was also popular in the underworld. Oppai Dragon. Gasper was nowhere to be seen, but Issei knew better to realize where the vampire was hiding. He was inside a box, which was right beside the couch that Issei and Kiba sat on. Issei began to have lecherous perverted thoughts of the girls. Riaz especially, images of her large oppai appearing right in front of his eyes, which had a dreamy, transfixed look in them. Ah, Riaz oppai never failed to amaze me, Issei said dreamily, completely unaware of Kiba being right next to him. Kiba raised an eyebrow and realized what Issei was daydreaming about, nudging Issei in his side, hoping to bring him back to reality. Issei-kun, snap out of it. Kiba told Issei, who shook his head and looked at Kiba. Kiba. I was having the best daydream of my life, and you shook me out of it. Issei said this while standing up and pointing a finger at him angrily, his mouth forming into a frown. Kiba sighed, sorry Issei-kun, but you need to be more focused. Issei sat down with a disappointed look on his face. And I was fondling them too, he muttered under his breath and desperately tried again to dream about the very same thing. While Issei said this, Azazel stepped into the living room in his usual attire while holding an envelope in his hand. Issei-kun, Kiba-kun, he said, getting their attention and surprise seeing him right there. Azazel-sensei. Issei yelled, standing up and facing him, what brings you here? That is what I want to know as well, another voice said. Issei, Kiba turned to face Riaz, who was wearing the Kuo Academy girl's uniform, as she looked at Azazel with a concerned look in her observant eyes, which glanced at the envelope in his hand. Don't be alarmed, I am not here for any kind of trouble, Azazel said with a smirk. I came here to bring you this. As advisor of the Occult Research Club, he held out the note, which was now revealed to have a wax seal in blue, bearing the symbol of the Citri clan. Now with their eyes widened as they stared at the note with a look of surprise. Wonder why they could be sending this to us, Riaz said aloud as she opened the envelope calmly. 10 slips of paper with a magic circle of teleportation falling out, one of them falling into Riaz's other hand. It's a message from Lord Citri, she announced, Issei and Kiba joining her as they read what was written on the paper. This is an invitation to Riaz Gremory and her peerage for the Citri clan's dinner party tonight at 9:30. Please come dressed in attire meant for this occasion and do enjoy the food given. The note ends with Lord Citri's signature, the clan symbol on the bottom of the invitation. But we can't turn this down. It's a great offer, Issei declared, his stomach growling at what he imagined would be available at the part. Issei-kun is right, we should attend, Kiba said, also wanting to go to the dinner party. Alright, if my ice wishes to go, then it shall happen. Let me go and get the others, Riaz said, turning around to be faced with the other girls already wearing dresses of various colors and designs, ready for the party. Akeno stepped forward, holding one of the invitations. We heard everything, and we're all ready, Akeno said with a smile, followed by a cheer from the other girls. Gasper slowly raised his head out of the box, confused at all the commotion. What's going on? He said with a yawn, revealing that he was sleeping inside the box. Issei kneeled down and faced him. Gasper-kun, get dressed in the nicest outfit that you have. We're going to a dinner party, Issei said, raising a fist in the air and cheering. Really? Gasper said, standing inside the box now with a smile on his face. Yes, Issei assured him, standing up and grinning now along with Gasper. Alright. I shall get dressed immediately. Gasper ran upstairs to his room, taking the box with him. 3 minutes pass, and Gasper comes down wearing a dress as the girls. Being a cross-dresser, this was normal behavior from him, but he seemed to fit the dress well. This also made Issei a little surprised, his mouth hanging open a little bit. But he quickly shut it. I'm ready, Issei-kun, Gasper said with another lively cheer. Great. Issei said to the others, let's go. He said, all of the group teleporting in magic circles to the Citri clan's household, leaving Azazel behind, who also used a magic circle as they did to go to the Citri's dinner party. In an instant, the group stands in front of a set of gates, the proud household of the Citri clan in front of their eyes. It was no larger than Issei's home, but it was more customized to the Citri's taste and design. Hedges concealing the presence of a large garden located in the back, a fountain being built in front of the household, signifying the Citri clan's abilities in water-based magic, and people also invited chatting with one another, smiling, having a good time. As the group stood amazed at the building designs, a familiar figure strode to them wearing robes from the Gremory clan. By the look on his face, he was having a good time just as everyone else was. A woman wearing a maid's uniform walked beside him. The man's most striking feature was that he also had crimson hair, as Riaz did. Serzich's Lucifer stood before them, a wineglass in his left hand. "Ah, Riaz. You made it." Serzicha said with a smile, his voice in a happy cheerful tone. "Ani-sama." Riaz said with surprise, not knowing that her brother would also be invited. Serzicha's being a Satan, that is, what are you doing here? She asked him, music starting to play from inside the building. "Same reason you're here. Father is also inside the building," Serzich's announced, Riaz being surprised further at this statement made by her brother. "Really?" Riaz was curious as she thought her brother was lying. However, Grafia stepped forward, facing Riaz. Her hands crossed and overlapping one another as they always were. "Yes, Riaz, it's all true. Lord Gremory is currently talking to Lord Citri over a drink," she said in a calm tone, and she stepped back beside Serzich's. "Now then, let us go inside, shall we?" Serzich's said, and he took Grafia's hand and began walking inside the citrus domain, followed by Riaz and her peerage quickly. Issei marveled at the place, as he has never been here before. "Wow, has this place always been like this?" he asked Riaz, not knowing much about the Citris in general. "Yes, Issei, this building has always been like this for many years. It almost got destroyed in the underworld crisis, but it still remains standing." As Issei and Riaz walked, Kuo Academy Student Council. Sona Citri stood at the doorway and greeted Riaz. Alongside the Occult Research Club, she and the Student Council are also devils. But Riaz and Sona are childhood friends, so they're on very good terms. Riaz also remembers how Sona and her own peerage also helped out Riaz's own peerage when Kakabiel attacked Kuo Academy. She could never forget that. "Greetings, Riaz," Sona said in her normal calm tone. She was also wearing a dress just as Riaz, but it was bright blue, whereas Riaz's dress was a crimson red. "Ah, Sona." Riaz went and gave Sona a hug, with Sona returning it as the two smiled at each other. Saji stepped outside and also saw Issei. "Issei-kun." Saji went and high-fived Issei, a grin on his face. "Saji. It's been a while since we last met at a time like this," Issei said, hinting at the calm and the festivity occurring on the grounds. "Ah yes, I like it when we're not fighting," Saji said with a sigh, which wasn't a sad sigh but a cheerful one. As the two peerages mingled and chatted with one another, some loud commotion could be heard, and many flashes from cameras lit up the area. Confused, the group turned to see many people photographing a person Issei, Riaz and Sona, especially Sona, knew. It was a young-looking girl who had her hair in twin ponytails, which were tied with bright purple, had bright pink-purple eyes, which were glittering with the girl's cheerful smile. She was also posing for the photographers, wearing a pink magic girl outfit, which was the girl's favorite show. In her hand she held a pink wand with a star in the middle of the wand's top design. As her eyes wandered, she saw the three staring at her, Issei especially, and she ran to them. Sona was quickly alarmed at the girl's sudden approach, at which the girl hugged Sona tightly. "Sona-chan." The girl said to her, and Sona grew more embarrassed and squirmed out of her older sister's grip. "Oni-sama, you don't have to do that," Sona said a little shakily at her sister, who turned to face Riaz and Issei with a smile. "Riaz-chan. Sekiryute-kun." She said to each one according to what she called them. Riaz and Issei returned the greeting. "Leviathan-sama." Issei said cheerfully, at which Serafall went and gave Issei a hug. Quickly Issei was getting excited, feeling her breasts against her chest. "The op-I of Amayu. I must be lucky to even hug Leviathan-sama. Thank the heavens for this sensation." Issei thought in his mind. Out of jealousy, Riaz pulled Issei away out of Serafall's grasp, a frown on her face. "Aw, Riaz-chan, why did you do that?" Serafall asked, at which Riaz didn't reply. But Serafall didn't care and casually stepped inside the household cheerfully, leaving the others outside. After a moment, Riaz and her peerage also followed after her inside, Riaz having to drag Issei, as he was still transfixed on the feeling of Serafall's breasts on his chest. Sona followed after them, silently hoping nothing would happen that would embarrass her tonight. As Issei stepped inside, his eyes widened and his mouth hung open with a little drool coming out of it. Tables were placed around an enchanted water sculpture of Lord Citri, Serafall being on his left and Sona being on his right. Since it was enchanted, the water held its place and never broke loose of its formation. But it was what was on the tables that caught Issei's attention. Many platters were on the cloth-covered wooden surfaces, each one adorned with almost every food you can imagine. And Grafia was right, Lord Gremory could be seen talking to Lord Citri, a laugh escaping between the two after a drink. Almost everyone else was having a good time. Riaz is still beside Issei. Kiba is already attracting girls as he makes his own plate of food. Zenobia, Asia, and Irina are seen talking to each other with a smile. Gasper was crawling around in a box on the floor, moving ever so slowly to not attract attention. And Office was seen watching a program on a HDTV in the Citri's living room with some other people, drinking a cream soda calmly. The four masks could be seen talking to one another also, Serafall in a very good mood. Serziches and Ajuka were also smiling. The two being good friends, but also powerful rivals. Azazel was seen drinking wine and talking to most random people. Wow, Issei whispered, and Riaz replied to this with a smile as she wrapped her arm around Issei's midsection, earning Issei's surprise and attention. Nothing really has changed, but it's still lively nonetheless. Though it's a surprise to see the four Mayus here, Riaz said, observing the actions of everyone around them. But you, just how many times have you been here? Issei asked, a little confused at her words when he managed to hear them over the rumble of excitement from everyone else but them. About once or twice. I think Lord Citri held this to celebrate the three great powers' victory over the hero faction during the underworld crisis. But this is a little late, Riaz said with a giggle, followed by a chuckle from Issei. What to eat, Issei mumbled, still unsure just of what he should eat first. There were too many good foods to devour. I would go for that stuffed chicken first, partner Drake suddenly said. Issei was not expecting Drake to even say anything, much more to even comment about what food Issei should eat. Drake. Issei said, still surprised, were you asleep? And you may not be wrong about eating that chicken first, Issei said, a dreamy look in his eyes. I was indeed asleep. But I've heard some commotion, and I wake to see you at a dinner party. I'm actually a little surprised myself, Drake stated clearly to Issei's ears. Since the dragon was sealed in Issei's sacred gear, boosted gear, he could hear Drake's voice over everyone else's. Well, sorry for waking you up, Issei apologized to Drake. It's okay, so long as I don't hear anything about the words oppai, breasts, or tits while we're here. Drake said. Issei remembered how Drake would be depressed whenever he heard those three words, which, unbelievably, led to special medicine being given to Issei to help calm down the dragon. Drake would even sometimes cry also. Alright, I'll be sure not to get involved in any of those kind of conversations, Issei said, a little depressed also since he couldn't go and talk about breasts. Which Issei was known for having a perverted obsession with. Thank you, now I'm going to sleep, Drake said, followed by a snore made by the dragon. Issei sighed and began to walk towards the stuffed chicken, hunger being instated at Issei just by looking at the chicken's crisp, tender appearance. Yep, Drake wasn't wrong, Issei was beginning to say, but got cut off hearing the sound of something cracking from above. The others also heard it and looked up in confusion. Out of the darkness, there came a large thick wooden beam that was diving for the ground. Perhaps the Citri household was in fact falling apart. The four Mass looked up to see the beam about to crush them and ran out of the way. Serafall tried to follow, but tripped over a snag in the carpet. Not having any time to react, she could only look up as the beam was going to land on her. Serafall closed her eyes and waited for impact. But it didn't happen. When she opened her eyes, she could see Issei standing over her in balance breaker form, holding up the beam, preventing it from crushing her. Struggling to keep it up, Issei stepped away from Serafall and placed it against a wall in the far corner on the wall. Serafall could do nothing but stare at Issei in wonder and gratitude, for he just saved her life. Issei exited balance breaker form and panted. He could have activated Crimson Promotion and entered Welsh Dragonic Rook form, but there was no time, so he could only turn into balance breaker form. Everyone else could only stare at him also in shock. Regaining her senses, Serafall ran to Issei and hugged him again, grateful for Issei's actions. Issei could do nothing but accepted her hug, being tired, but was instantly rejuvenated after feeling her breasts against his chest once more. Soon, everyone was clapping at the sudden event, happy that Issei saved Serafall's life. He especially got applause from the other three Maus. Bravo. Well done. Great work, Issei. Were only some of the words that he heard. Serafall stepped away from Issei, a smile still on her face. Thank you so much, Sekiryute-kun. I'll never forget what you have done today to save my life, she said, bowing at Issei before going back to join the other Maus. Riaz stepped forward to Issei and smiled. Great job, Ice. Riaz said, Issei now fully recovered from being tired. Yeah, Issei breathed out in a smile and he walked to get a piece of that stuffed chicken. The party also continued on as planned. Soon, everyone went home in good spirits, the Citris waving as they left. The Occult Research Club were now back in Issei's home and they went to bed. Issei sleeping in his own room, but Riaz also sleeping with him, holding his right arm as Issei stared at the ceiling. He cold jet the party out of his head as he left in good spirit and with a filled stomach. A smile came to his face as he fell asleep. His hand on one of Riaz's oppai before he did. Elsewhere, Serafall was still at the Citri household, her father inviting her to stay for the night. She laid in a bed in her own room, awake and having no intention to sleep. Her mind went on to think of things, but she couldn't stop thinking about what Issei has done today. Without him, she would have died. Sekiryuite-kun, she whispered as she remained awake for another hour, but fell asleep anyway. The next day, Issei awoke to feel something soft in his hand. Looking over, he saw that one of his hands were squeezing Ria's breasts. But what made him further surprised was that she seemed to hold his hand there. A nosebleed came forth out of Issei's nose as he could only stare. Duchess Oppai. The greatest thing in the entire world. I'm truly blessed to see and feel such things. Issei thought as Riaz awoke and smiled at him. Good morning, Ice, she said, patting his cheek and getting up to get dressed. As usual, she had no clothes on at all. This only helped Issei's nosebleed to erupt as he saw her naked body before his eyes. Quickly, he clamped a hand over his nose to hold it in, but blood leaked out from between his fingers. But you, Issei said aloud as she walked out of his room, and Issei went to clean himself up. While he was doing so, Sona appeared before Riaz, which surprised her as she wasn't expecting Sona to be there. Riaz, I bring news. A new resident will be staying here. Sona said with barely any hint of emotion, always speaking with a serious tone. Who? Riaz asked, now curious about who it will be, at which Sona shakes her head. I cannot say as I was told to keep it secret. However, that person will be here in about. She looked at the clock, which was 20 minutes away from 1 o'clock p.m. 20 minutes. Sona's words alarmed Riaz, as she quickly realized everyone needed to be ready to greet this new person with that. My business here is done, Sona said, before disappearing in a magic circle. I must hurry. Riaz quickly went about and told everyone that a new resident will be living in the Hyoudou household, at which everyone was equally surprised. They quickly got dressed and waited downstairs for the person to arrive. At 1 o'clock exactly, the doorbell rang. Issei got up and went to open the door. Humming. He announced to whoever was outside the door. He opened it and his eyes went wide seeing who was standing at his doorstep. Holding 2 suitcases in each of her hands, it was no other than Serafall Leviathan, who smiled seeing Issei. Riaz and the other girls were now questioning why she, Amayu, was staying here. Sekiryuite-kun. Serafall said cheerfully, before stepping inside and looking around, greeting the others. Also being questionable, Issei spoke to her. Leviathan-sama, what are you doing here? Issei asked, at which Serafall turned to face him. Ah. The directors of your show, Oppai Dragon, and my show, Magical Leviathan, met at the party last night. They want to direct a crossover movie starring us. So because of that, I am staying here to get to know you better, Sekiryuite-kun. And I really hope I get to do that because of what you did for me last night. Serafall announced, at which Issei was surprised. The crossover movie of Oppai Dragon and Magical Leviathan. Who knows how popular it will be when it's released. I see Issei continued to think about the movie when Serafall announced something else. Along with staying here, I will be attending Kuo Academy as full-time teacher. Oh, and I'll be teaching world history. The old teacher dropped out, she announced, her smile growing wider and the others being more shocked. But don't worry, Serzuch-sama will be taking over for my position as Amayu, along with Grafia-sama, she also said. Issei could do nothing now but stare at Serafall and wonder what will happen from now on, as she is now a resident at his home. Soon, Serafall got settled in and they all sat down for lunch, tension on everyone's mind that Amayu was living here now. Elsewhere, Sona hoped that Serafall wouldn't go about causing issues at Issei's home and at Kuo Academy. Issei looked around him, noting everyone's facial expressions, except Serafall's, having a very nervous look. It was expected anyway, Amayu was in their presence. To add up to it, she was living with the rest of them, which made them even more nervous. As they waited anxiously for breakfast to be served, Serafall was smiling and acting like her usual cheerful self. At one point, she looked at Issei and asked a question. Sekiryuite-kun? She said. Issei didn't hear her until a few seconds later. Before he was in deep thought that he didn't pay any attention to the real world and what was going on in it. Yes. Issei replied, raising his head up from the table. When is the next shooting session of Oppai Dragon? Serafall asked, at which Issei was surprised at the question. Issei thought for a second. He remembered Ravel telling him about it and to be there on time, not any time later. Suddenly, he remembered. This week, tomorrow, at 4 o'clock p.m. he answered Serafall, who smiled once again in a way Issei thought it was cute. Would you mind if I go there with you and observe what happens? I'm quite curious to see how you do everything in that show, Serafall said to Issei, whom was only further surprised by what she was asking. Sure, I won't mind at all. Issei answered again, his tone now showing a hint of nervousness. What if Serafall found the show to be bad? What if something starts to happen at his house and Serafall is displeased at that? With those thoughts, Issei couldn't help but to break out in a nervous sweat. Serafall takes notice of Issei sweating and she reaches over and wipes it off his forehead with a napkin. Sekiryuite-kun? Are you alright? Now she notices that Issei was acting nervous in front of her, at which the others literally hold in their breath. She finally saw that in fact, everyone was nervous at the moment around her. She knew why. Everyone. Ria-sama, Sekiryute-kun, I know why you're acting like this. But do not worry, for I will not become mad or angry at anything. She says this with a smile. I understand that some things will happen during my stay here, but I won't mind. You can feel free to be yourself at all times. Serafall finishes this and takes a bite out of a biscuit that Issei's mother had gave to everyone while breakfast was almost ready. At her words, everyone takes a deep sigh of relief, with the exception of Ria's, who went to help Issei's mother with making the food. After Thea calmed down, everyone started to smile. After that, Ria's and Issei's mother finished preparing breakfast and set down plates of pancakes and eggs, along with giving everyone else a glass of orange juice. Serafall eyed this, as she never ate this kind of food before. When Ria's was seated, everyone said their thanks. Itadakimasu. They all said, before eating. The church trio started a pleasant chat as Office started talking to Gasper, with Rasei hovering and landing on top of her head. Roswas took a couple bites out of everything and hurried to get out the door so she could teach at Kuo Academy. Tiba was also talking to the church trio, Zenobia especially, and Ravel started a conversation with Ria's, Issei, Akeno and Serafall at once. Ice-kun, Op-I Dragon has made some considerable profit this week, Ravel announced. How much? Both Ria's and Issei said at the same time. Ravel took out a small notepad from her pocket and looked at it. About 15 million yen, she answered. Both Ria's and Issei's eyes widened to the max. Issei almost spat out his food in response, but held it in. What? Both say, very surprised at just how much money was made off of the Op-I Dragon merchandise. But it was understandable, as Op-I Dragon was a very popular TV show amongst the children of the underworld. Still, they didn't see that coming. What? Is that a lot? Ravel asked. She was still getting used to being in Japan, along with its culture and economy. Yeah. Issei said loudly, unaware that everyone was looking at him as he stood up saying his words. That's a lot of money. I cannot believe my TV show would make that much. Issei continued. Ah, Sekiryute-kun. I make that kind of money all the time, so it's nothing to brag about, Serafall said with her usual tone of voice. Ice-kun, please sit down. Leviathan-sama is right, popular folks make that kind of money, Ria said, ushering to Issei to sit down once again, everyone still staring at Issei. Realizing what situation he was in, Issei took Ria's advice and sat down, Akeno starting to smile. My, 15 million yen. That is a lot, Akeno said, followed by her trademark giggle that everyone came to know her by, especially Ria's. The two were best friends ever since Ria's made Akeno her queen so long ago, during the time Ria's started to make up her own peerage. Serafall took a bite of her food and immediately put on a pleased face. This is great. Who cooked this? Serafall asked, now very cheerful to find out who cooked breakfast. Slowly, Ria's raised her hand. I did, Leviathan-sama, she said, and Serafall grinned. You're a great cook. Is there anyone else here that prepares food around this place? She asked. I do, Akeno said normally, as well as Aisha said, still a little shyly. Sometimes I do, though not that much, Kaneko announced, dressed and ready to go. She ate her food fast, without talking to anyone. Rosui-sama does sometimes also, Issei told Serafall, who nodded at his words. Alright. I may just have everyone here cook for. Serafall stopped and frowned a little, realizing she was asking for too much out of her fellow residents. I'm so sorry everyone, I'm asking for too much, she says before getting up, along with everyone else, after they finished taking the last bites of their food. Everyone looked at Serafall and smiled. Leviathan-sama, it's our pleasure to make you cheerful in any way, Ria said with a smile, along with everyone else who followed her example. Now it was Serafall's turn to be surprised. Really? But I insist, Serafall started to say, but Akeno came up behind her and placed a hand on her shoulder. She turned around to face Akeno. Leviathan-sama, we mean it. I myself don't mind cooking for my superior, Akeno said, with a giggle. Serafall remained speechless and smiled. Thank you everyone, she said, her smile growing wider. After that, everyone got ready and walked together as one group to Kuo Academy, Office remaining at the house with Race, and the two played with each other, while Office sipped a cream soda. Meanwhile, at Kuo Academy. The school day has ended. Issei and the others walked, along with Serafall Leviathan, back to the house. Issei couldn't stop thinking of just how much attention Serafall has received from his fellow male classmates. Many guys thought that Serafall was cute and Issei thought so himself. A couple times, Issei stared at Serafall with a lecherous look as she got up and announced an answer to a problem, but remembering she was a Mayu and staring at her with that look, he shoved his face into the large textbook that was in front of him. Later on, dinner was placed in front of everyone, and they ate it gladly. Serafall especially commented about the cooking once again, which Ria still cooked. After dinner, everyone departed to their rooms and fell asleep. However, Serafall remained awake considering something Akeno told her, as a way to get to know Issei better. According to Akeno, Serafall needed this for the movie that was coming up in an unknown time. Silently, she rose from her bed and went to Issei's room. The next morning, Issei awoke calmly, smiling as the light from the sun poured into his room from an open window. However, he couldn't get up as he felt a weight on top of him. Looking in that direction, he saw something concealed by his bed sheets. For a moment, he considered it was Ria's, but he looked to his left and saw her crimson hair as she held both of his arms to her chest. Wonder what this could be on top of me, Issei thought. He noted that whatever it was actually a female, as he could feel her eye against his chest. Being tired, he didn't have a nosebleed, but only wanted to find out who it was on top of him. Could it be a Keno? He thought, the female's eye feeling as soft as hers. I'll just wait for this person to wake up to see who it is, he thought. However, he had no need to do that, as a familiar face revealed itself from underneath the covers. Issei stared in shock at Serafall Leviathan's face, which was smiling at him. Good morning, Sekirute-kun, she said cheerfully with a smile. Issei's reaction was holding back a nosebleed and thinking why Amayu would be sleeping with him. While thinking, Serafall lifted up and stretched, still on top of Issei. Ah, this is too good to be true. Serafall actually slept with me. Her eye against me all night. I am the luckiest devil in the entire world. Issei thought while smiling. However, after regaining his composure and withstanding a jealous speech from Rias, Issei, Rias, Serafall and the others were on the way to where the newest episode of Oppai Dragon was being shot. When they arrived, in the flatlands of the underworld, to the set, Serafall stood amazed. The set to Oppai Dragon was way different than the set to her own show. Magical Leviathan. Being driven by curiosity, she asked Issei if she could come to the set more often, which Issei replied with a yes. The theme for this episode was where Darkness Knight Fang has allied himself with a powerful group of rogue magicians and intended to use their abilities to destroy Oppai Dragon. After finding where they were hiding, Issei, in balance breaker form, defeated them with the aid of Switch Princess, who actually was Ria's. When they were finished shooting, the director and his crew for the show stayed behind to finish wrapping up gathering their equipment. Issei and the others went and started the trek home, Issei receiving compliments for the brilliant acting and plot Oppai Dragon has, Issei being flushed as she gave them. However, nearby the group, watching them from a distance, a dragon watched with sinister, silver eyes. His scales were a deep dark green, giving him natural camouflage in the trees. Unlike any other dragon, this one stood on his hind legs. Grendel watched Issei especially, remembering the time when he fought against Issei. Grendel may have actually killed him, but he was ordered to retreat by Euclid. This disappointed the evil dragon, as Issei was actually entertaining him. However, Grendel was only a pawn for a much darker onslaught. And it won't be him that will fight Issei. Using his abilities, Grendel created a dragon gate. The gate was tan in color, just like the Egyptian sands of the desert. As Grendel backed away from the gate, a very large dragon came out of it, many times larger than Grendel. When the new dragon was fully out of the dragon gate, Grendel pointed at Issei. Fill the Sekirute, Grendel said simply, and the other dragon launched itself into the sky for a surprise attack. Seeing the dragon following Issei from the sky, Grendel withdrew from the area with a sneer, walking into the trees. Serafall once again hugged Issei, and her breasts were against his chest for the fourth time. Issei never grew tired of the sensation and grew flattered. It was here that the other dragon decided to attack. It flew down towards them silently and quickly, opening its large fanged mouth, intending to swallow them and be done with it. Issei was still hugging Serafall. Partner, look out. Drake suddenly spoke, and Issei looked up into the other dragon's quickly approaching mouth. Issei picked up Serafall, much to her confusion. Sekirute-kun. What are you? She didn't have time to finish. Issei dodged the incoming dragon's sneak attack as it collided with the ground, raising up a large cloud of dust. Serafall once again was saved by Issei. After Serafall was on her own feet, everyone's weapons being drawn, a pair of red glowing eyes glared at the group from behind the cloud of dust. Issei could feel Drake being on high alert from within his boosted gear. Is that Don? Tell me. Issei saw that Drake seemed to know who they were fighting. Who is it, Drake? Issei said, the cloud parting a little to reveal the dragon's huge silhouette. Apophis. Drake said with sudden alarm, as the other dragon was revealed to them. This dragon's general appearance was a lot more snake-like than most, as its body looked to be just like a snake. Scales colored like ancient stones covered its body, from tail tip to snout. Its most prominent feature was that it had a large hood. Just like a king cobra. But instead of a cobra's natural hood design, this one had designs of blood-red eyes. Speaking of eyes. This dragon's eyes were glowing red, a black slit in the middle of each eye and focused on Issei. It glared at them with murderous intent. From its mouth, large fangs were formed as it made an utteral noise at them, about to speak. Apophis. Issei remembered how Grendel mentioned that name when the two were fighting. Serafall put on a terrified face, recognizing the dragon. Leviathan-sama. You know of this dragon? Issei asked, Serafall turning to him with a nod. Yes. This dragon is the Egyptian dragon god of chaos, a very powerful and feared dragon. His mortal enemy is the Egyptian sun god, Ra, whom he has been fighting against for millennia, Serafall announced. Issei eyes widened, now knowing this dragon was a god. Preferably, a dragon god of chaos. Indeed, you do recognize me, girl. I am Apophis, the dragon god of chaos, devourer of the sun and order. And you, I know you, Sekirute, Apophis said in a deep, sinister voice, fitting for his reputation. He turned his large head to face Issei, the burning sensation increasing in all of them as chaos itself seemed to enter their bodies. Apophis. Drake said aloud for everyone to hear. How did you escape your imprisonment? I thought Ra permanently sealed you away. Apophis spoke to Drake. Yes, Sekirute. Ra did seal me away for eternity, but a friend of mine released me, Apophis declared, confusing the group. Only another god could have freed Apophis, but who? Tell us, who freed you? Issei declared at Apophis, at which the snake chuckled. You're interesting, human. But you should know this. Drake aided Ra in my sealing, so it's only natural for me to kill you, first Apophis said to Issei. A new war will break out, and I will watch as the bats and the ravens fall from their grace in the sky, Apophis also said to Issei, whom realized that Apophis was referencing to the devils and fallen angels, and heaven isn't safe either. We will storm their gates, and their cities shall fall, starting off with the underworld, Apophis said, which angered Issei. I will not let you destroy the underworld. Even if you are a god. Issei said, changing into his regular balance breaker form. Ah, you are no different from the arrogance of Drake. Apophis stated loudly. Issei clenched his teeth and started to use the boosted gear's ability to double his power, knowing how dangerous it is to fight a god from when he battled against Loki. Come, Sekirute, and allow me to show you the difference in our power. Apophis let out a roar that stretched for hundreds of miles as the group prepared to fight the embodiment of chaos itself. Apophis roared, the terrifying sound stretching for hundreds of miles that it was possible it could be faintly heard from the underworld's capital. Lilith. Issei activated his 10th boost. Rias held above her hand an orb made out of the power of destruction, Akeno an orb of holy lightning, Kiba summoned Gram, Zenobia her X Durandal, Serafall readied her ice-based attacks with her magical girl wand, and Arena her holy demonic sword. Asia and Gasper his behind a large boulder, realizing they will be better off acting as support for the battle. As the two forces stood staring each other down, ferocity in both of their eyes, Apophis suddenly made a lightning-quick movement that the others didn't see. He was slithering towards them very quickly, alarm raising amongst the allies. That's coming. Rias shouted as she launched her power of destruction at Apophis, along with Akeno's holy lightning, combining with the power of destruction. As their opponent was a god, they all had to go at him with all they had. Rias and Akeno stood hoping the combination will have effect on Apophis, along with Issei and Kiba. Asia and Gasper also had the same reaction, but Arena had her sword's abilities on ready in case if they didn't. Which they didn't. Even though they were combined, Rias and Akeno's attack reflected harmlessly off of Apophis's scales. Everyone's eyes widened, except for Arena's, which made the dragon chuckle at their surprise. Such lowly attacks won't work on me. I want to face the Sekirute. Apophis declared as his large tail swats away everyone but Issei, Serafall, Asia and Gasper, who were still hiding behind the boulder. Rias, Akeno, Kiba, Zenobia and Arena smashed against a rock wall and had identical reactions as they spat out blood from heavy internal injuries from the force of the impact. Seeing this, Issei and Serafall glare at Apophis. Asia runs over and begins to heal the others' injuries, while Gasper grew determined to help Issei and Serafall any way he can. Now it was only down to Issei and Serafall to stop Apophis. Issei flew above Apophis with his dragon wings, while Serafall slid behind Apophis's body with her ice magic, sliding across it like a skater. Apophis reared back and flew up at Issei, ignoring Serafall. While Issei thought Apophis would try to swallow him, Apophis did open his jaw, but did a total opposite move. Instead, from his mouth he breathed a great amount of purple flame. At the rapidly approaching inferno, both Issei and Serafall were surprised at Apophis's move. Issei had no time to react, as he was engulfed in the fire. About a second later, Issei was falling from the sky, his dragon wings and most of his armor completely destroyed. Before he could land on the ground, Serafall created an ice slide for Issei to have a soft landing. He slid to her feet and he sat up, beginning to repair his armor. Too slow, Sekirute, Apophis said, before swatting Issei away with his tail, much more harder than how much force he used when he got rid of the others. Issei went into a hillside, which collapsed on him. Now it was only Apophis and Serafall. For the time being. Now it's just you and me, Apophis quietly said, before slithering slowly toward Serafall, who was backing away desperately. Celsius cross trigger. She said, brandishing her wand. The immediate area soon turned into ice, which formed a tough shell around Apophis's body, restricting his movement. Issei crawled out of the hill, not wanting to get Apophis's attention. Brah. Apophis roared before breaking out of the ice, his anger being reignited but only directed at Serafall. "Perhaps you will be the first I kill," he said angrily, slithering quickly at Serafall and opening his jaw. Serafall couldn't do anything to stop him and held out her arms in a feeble defense. "Ascalon," Issei yelled, the holy dragon slaying sword appearing from his boosted gear. While recovering and finishing up repairs to his armor, Issei saw Apophis about to kill Serafall. Using his Welsh sonic booster night speed, he made it in time. Issei drew the sword alongst Apophis's jaw, black blood spurting out of the wound. "I will not let you harm Serafall or anyone else here any further," Issei shouted to Apophis so everyone could hear him. In response, Apophis drew back, but the wound immediately began to heal. Serafall looked up at Issei, who saved her life once again. From her view, she saw just how strong and willing Issei is to protect those he holds dearly. Not only that, he saved her more than once, but thrice. Issei had his back at Serafall, standing and staring down Apophis. A little after that, a new feeling that Serafall hadn't felt before blossomed inside her body. She felt this, and her face grew a little red from its intensity. Putting that feeling aside, she stood up and went beside Issei. "Now you're teaming up on me," Apophis laughed, the Sekuruyute and the Mao. "How scary you two will entertain me," he said before getting serious again. Issei and Serafall launched at Apophis while he said that. But the dragon had another trick up his sleeve. "Sandstorm," Apophis shouted before releasing from his mouth a fury of both wind and sand. Issei was pushed back at the wind's force while Serafall closed her eyes, blind. Her Celsius cross trigger was overpowered at the heat the sands carried as the ice melted. Now everything was all inside a giant sandstorm. Issei could still see, not being affected by the sandstorm as his face was behind his armor's mask. Apophis intended for it to be like this, so it was truly only him and Issei. Apophis's red eyes glared at Issei from behind the sandstorm. Staring at each other, both charged at each other, letting out loud cries of fury. Issei, still having access to illegal move Trident, sped at Apophis with Welsh Sonic Booster Night Speed, jumped so he was facing at Apophis's face, and activated Welsh Dragonic Rook Explosion. The boosted gear announced, Issei's stored boosted power now being released, increasing the power of his punch he delivered on Apophis's scaly snout. Apophis drew back as Issei purposed a powered-up dragon shot in the palm of his boosted gear. "Dragon shot," Issei shouted before releasing the stored energy at Apophis, the blast consuming all of his body and some of the land. When the smoke cleared, Apophis glared at Issei. Some scales were shredded off of his body because of Issei's dragon shot and he lost all traces of anger. The sandstorm began to subside. "Sekuruyute, you still have a long way to go before you are able to challenge me," Apophis said, Issei still on guard in case if anything were to happen. "I will admit that last attack did manage to scratch me, but alas. It wasn't enough. I wish for a good battle from you, Sekuruyute. And that is why I shall allow you the time to train," he said, Issei being surprised at his words. Issei remained silent as Apophis activated a magic circle, slithering towards it. "Until next time, Sekuruyute. You aren't worth my time yet," he said to Issei before being teleported away from the immediate area and the underworld. Issei remained still, but knew he will have to fight Apophis again the next time they met. One of them, either him or Apophis, will die at that encounter, wherever it may lie. The sandstorm cancelled, and all was calm. The area, however, took heavy damage from both forces' attacks. Everyone, including Serafall, ran to congratulate Issei for holding off Apophis. "Ice-kun. You did well. Great job, Issei. Well done." Those were some of the messages Issei received. Serafall approached Issei and said to him, "I'm happy at your victory here." Serafall now facing Issei completely. "But you'll still have to fight him again one day." When Serafall was done, Issei carefully noticed a hint of red across her cheeks. She too felt this and was surprised. In her mind, she scheduled a meeting with her younger sister to console her about these strange emotions she was feeling. "Leviathan-sama," Issei said to her, Serafall having turned around away from Issei. "Don't worry, I'm alright," she said, turning back around to face the others and Issei, her cheerful personality brought back for all to see. "Now, we must get home quickly," Ria said, pointing off to the distance where a great many people were heading to their location to question what happened in the area that resulted in its destruction. "Yes, but you?" Issei, Kiba, Akeno, Zenobia, Asia and Gasper said. Irina and Serafall simply nodded as the group teleported in a magic circle back towards the Hyoudou residence. Later that day, the day swiftly passed upon their arrival back at home. News spread quickly about the attack and its involvement with Apophis, but none in the house, with exception of Office, were interested in it. Night approached just as quick and all settled to bed. However, when everyone was sure to be asleep, Serafall teleported in a magic circle towards the city park where Sona promised to meet her. Upon arrival, Serafall saw that Sona was sitting on a bench, which Serafall joined her at. "Now then, what is it that you wanted to talk about?" Sona asked Serafall, who looked at her in turn. After today's incident with Apophis, if Serafall got cut off as Sona was surprised. Wait, you were there when Apophis attacked? Sona questioned, where Serafall nodded. Yeah, actually everyone was. Issei fought Apophis too. Now Sona was getting questionable, but held back her own questions. Okay, now you were saying. Sona said as the moon came out from behind a cloud. After the incident I've been feeling strange emotions towards Sekirute-kun, Serafall explained. Like? Sona wanted an example, so she can determine what Serafall was going through. Well, I came to see how determined he was to protect everyone. That same hint of red spread across Serafall's face, which alarmed Sona. She instantly knew what her older sister was going through, and I get red whenever I look at him, Serafall finished, where Sona looked at Serafall with a serious look. When he saw Sona hesitated to say it, but by the look on her sister's face, she had to tell her. I think you're in love with Issei-kun. End of the part 1. So how was this story? I hope you like it. And if you like it, share this story with your friends and like the video too. And don't forget to subscribe our channel for daily awesome fanfiction. Okay, it's time for me to go. Bye bye.